The air at the military firing range was thick with tension, punctuated by the sharp cracks of gunfire and the low murmur of soldiers exchanging jabs and snickers. Private Emma Collins stood rigidly at the edge of the line, her fingers tightening around the grip of her M4 rifle. Around her, a cluster of male soldiers leaned casually against their gear, their faces twisted in varying degrees of scorn and disbelief. The usual banter that accompanied training exercises had taken on a sharper edge, a chorus of derision aimed squarely at the woman who dared to stand among them. "Hey, Collins, you sure you're holding that thing right?" one soldier taunted, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth as he watched her adjust her stance. "Maybe you want to leave the shooting to the real men." Laughter rippled through the group like a wave, some soldiers doubling over while others exchanged knowing glances. Emma said nothing. Her jaw clenched, but her eyes remained steady, focused on the target downrange. She could feel their gazes burning into her back, heavy with doubt and disbelief, but she refused to let it break her concentration. This was the moment she had been preparing for, the moment to silence the whispers and prove that skill and determination were not bound by gender. Colonel James Harper stood a few paces behind the firing line, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. The seasoned commander had seen many soldiers come and go, and he had learned to reserve judgment until the evidence was undeniable. Watching Emma now, he could sense the undercurrent of tension that swirled around her like a storm cloud, but there was something else, a quiet resolve that set her apart from the rest. Still, he remained skeptical. The military was a demanding world, and the rigors of combat were no place for sentiment. She needed to demonstrate more than quiet resolve, she needed to deliver results. "All right, Collins," he finally called out, his voice steady but with an edge of challenge. "Show me what you've got." Emma's heart thudded against her ribs, but her face remained composed. She moved forward with measured steps, her boots crunching against the gravel, and took her position at the firing line. The target lay ahead, a standard silhouette paper, but to Emma, it felt like the weight of every doubt and sneer pressed into that blank space. The other soldiers watched, some with amused curiosity, others with barely concealed disdain. Whispers floated through the air like smoke. "She won't hit a thing. Probably never fired a real round before. This'll be good." Emma inhaled deeply, centering herself. Her training kicked in, the drills she had run through countless times, the hours spent honing her aim in solitude. She raised the rifle, brought the sights to align with the target, and squeezed the trigger. The sharp crack of the bullet echoed across the range. The first shot struck just outside the bullseye. A few heads turned, eyebrows raised. Emma didn't flinch. She adjusted her grip, steadied her breathing, and fired again. Shot after shot, the rounds found their marks closer and closer to the center. The murmurs among the soldiers faltered, replaced by a growing undercurrent of surprise. Some shifted uneasily, their earlier confidence beginning to waver. Still, no one said a word. Emma's silence was louder than their jeers. Colonel Harper's eyes narrowed, his posture relaxing slightly. He had seen many rookies falter under scrutiny, but Emma's steady hand and unwavering gaze told a different story. She was not merely enduring the pressure, she was thriving under it. One soldier, Corporal Mike Reynolds, broke the silence with a snide remark. "Lucky shots, that's all. Doesn't mean she's ready for the real deal." Emma turned her head briefly, meeting his gaze with a calm that cut deeper than any insult. She said nothing, letting her actions speak for her. The training officer called out the next exercise, signaling the soldiers to prepare for a timed shooting drill. Emma took a step back, lowered her weapon, and began to ready herself for the challenge ahead. Around her, the soldiers exchanged glances, their previous certainty replaced by a grudging curiosity. The range commander, Sergeant Major Davis, approached Colonel Harper quietly. "She's got the nerve, sir. Not many rookies hold steady like that under fire, even if it's just training." Harper nodded slowly. "We'll see if it's enough." Emma's fingers flexed, loosening the tension. She allowed herself a brief moment to recall the countless hours spent in the barracks, the early mornings and late nights dedicated to sharpening her skills. Her background was not typical, years of disciplined training before enlisting, a solitary pursuit of excellence in a world that often told her she didn't belong. Those experiences had forged a quiet strength beneath her calm exterior. The soldiers resumed their positions, the air crackling with renewed energy. Emma stepped forward once more, taking her stance. Her eyes locked onto the targets ahead, her breath even and controlled. The first shot rang out, clean and precise. The second, the third, each round a testament to her growing confidence and unyielding focus. Gradually, the atmosphere shifted. The mocking laughter faded, replaced by whispered acknowledgments and sideways glances of respect. Emma's performance was undeniable. She was not just keeping pace, she was setting a standard. Colonel Harper's lips twitched into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. For the first time since the morning, his voice held a note of approval. "Good work, Collins. Keep it up." Emma allowed herself a small, measured nod. She was far from finished, but this was a start, a crack in the wall of doubt that surrounded her. The road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but she was ready to meet them head-on. The firing range was no longer just a proving ground, it was the battleground where she would earn her place, shot by shot, steady and unbroken. The morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the firing range as the soldiers prepared for the next series of drills. The air, once thick with derision, now simmered with a quiet tension, an unspoken challenge hanging between Emma Collins and the men who still wrestled with their disbelief. She could feel it in the sidelong glances, the muted whispers behind her back, the subtle shift in the atmosphere as they waited to see if her early success was a fluke or the start of something real. Her hands gripped the rifle with the same steady resolve, but beneath the calm, a storm brewed. Each taunt, each doubting look, was a gauntlet thrown down. And Emma was determined to pick it up, to prove that her place here was earned, not given. Corporal Reynolds was the loudest voice of the skepticism. "You think you're some kind of prodigy, Collins? Just wait. When the pressure's on, you'll crack." His smirk was as sharp as the crack of gunfire, and the soldiers around him nodded, ready to pounce on any sign of weakness. Emma didn't respond. Words were weapons she reserved for battle, here, actions would be her ammunition. The drill officer barked orders, signaling the start of the timed shooting exercise. The soldiers lined up, rifles at the ready. Emma took her place, her mind narrowing to the rhythm of breath and heartbeat. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1, fire. The sharp reports echoed across the range as the soldiers unleashed their rounds on the targets before them. Emma's first shots were deliberate, precise, each bullet finding its mark with near-surgical accuracy. Her training, disciplined and relentless, kicked in seamlessly, muscle memory guiding her through the sequence with practiced grace. Around her, the men fired with varying degrees of skill and speed. Some were quick but sloppy, their shots scattering across the targets. Others were slow and methodical but missed critical timing marks. Emma, however, balanced speed and precision with a calm that seemed almost unnatural under the circumstances. Reynolds sneered as he reloaded. "Lucky again," he muttered loud enough for her to hear. "This won't last." Emma's eyes flicked to him, cold and unyielding. She didn't reply. Letting her marksmanship speak was more effective than any retort. As the drill progressed, subtle hints of her background began to surface. A fellow soldier, Private Daniels, whispered to a companion nearby, "I heard she was in a cadet program for years before enlisting. Supposedly, her old sergeant said she was a natural, disciplined as hell." The rumor spread quietly, shifting the conversation away from mockery toward reluctant acknowledgement. Still, the soldiers' doubts lingered like a stubborn fog. Many had never encountered a woman with such unwavering focus and skill. It unsettled them, challenged the unspoken rules of their world. Emma's breaths remained measured, her posture unyielding. Each round fired was a statement, a refusal to be defined by others' expectations. The weight of their skepticism pressed against her, but she stood firm, her resolve hardening with every shot. Colonel Harper observed from a distance, his gaze keen. He had seen many soldiers stumble under the crushing weight of peer judgment, but Emma's composure was different. There was a discipline that went beyond training, a quiet strength forged in solitude and perseverance. Yet, he knew the true test was yet to come. Skill alone wouldn't secure her place, she needed to withstand the relentless scrutiny, the unyielding pressure of those who doubted her. The timed exercise concluded. Scores were called out, and Emma's name ranked near the top, her accuracy and speed rivaling the best marksman present. The room stirred with a mixture of surprise and begrudging respect. Still, the undercurrent of hostility remained. Some soldiers whispered that her performance was an anomaly, a momentary flash of brilliance that would fade under real conditions. Others questioned the legitimacy of her background, casting aspersions on the stories that had begun to circulate. Emma felt the sting of every whispered doubt, but she refused to let it break her. Instead, each challenge fueled her determination, sharpening her focus like a blade honed by fire. During a brief pause, Sergeant Major Davis approached Emma quietly. His voice was low but firm. You're holding your own, Collins. Don't let the noise get to you. They'll come around, or they won't. Doesn't matter. You've got what it takes. Emma nodded, appreciating the rare gesture of support. It was a small island of reassurance in a sea of skepticism. The soldiers gathered for the next phase of training, a series of simulated combat scenarios designed to test reflexes and tactical thinking under pressure. Emma's heart quickened. This was where theory met reality, where skill was tested not just by marksmanship but by the chaos of the battlefield. As the scenarios unfolded, Emma's background became more apparent. Her movements were fluid, deliberate, each decision calculated with precision. She anticipated threats, communicated clearly, and adapted swiftly to changing conditions. Her performance was not just competent, it was exceptional. The men who had mocked her earlier began to shift their stance, some exchanging surprised glances, others offering tentative nods of approval. The atmosphere was changing, subtle but undeniable. Corporal Reynolds, however, remained defiant. After a particularly effective maneuver by Emma, he scoffed, "Don't get cocky. One good run doesn't mean you're ready for combat." Emma met his gaze, unwavering. "I'm not here to prove you wrong. I'm here to do my job. If that's a problem, you can take it up with the commander." The room fell silent for a moment, the tension thick but contained. It was the first time anyone had heard her speak so directly, and the impact was palpable. Colonel Harper stepped forward, his voice cutting through the quiet. "Enough. This isn't about proving anything to each other. It's about working together. Collins has demonstrated skill and discipline. Let's focus on what matters, preparing for what's ahead." The soldiers shifted uneasily but nodded. The day's training resumed with a renewed sense of purpose, the earlier division softened by the undeniable truth of Emma's capabilities. As the sun dipped lower, casting a golden hue over the range, Emma allowed herself a brief moment to reflect. The journey was far from over, and the challenges ahead would be many. But today, she had taken another step forward, carving a space for herself in a world that had been reluctant to accept her. Her silence remained her strongest weapon, her steady aim the proof that she was more than what the soldiers had doubted. She was a force to be reckoned with, not because of who she was expected to be, but because of who she had chosen to become. The tension in the firing range was palpable as Emma Collins stepped forward for the final shooting test. The day had been long, filled with whispered doubts and veiled challenges, but now it all boiled down to this single moment, a test not just of skill, but of nerve. The soldiers gathered behind her, their eyes sharp and unrelenting, waiting to see if she would falter under the weight of their scrutiny. Her fingers gripped the rifle with familiar steadiness, the cold metal a reassuring anchor amid the storm of expectation. Emma's breath slowed, each inhale drawing in calm, each exhale releasing tension. She had rehearsed this countless times, the mechanics of her stance and aim drilled into muscle memory. But this was different. This was the crucible, the moment where doubt met determination. Colonel James Harper stood off to the side, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He had seen many soldiers crack under pressure, but Emma's quiet confidence intrigued him. Still, he withheld judgment, knowing that even the best could falter when the stakes were highest. "Collins," the range officer called out, "when you're ready." Emma didn't respond aloud. Instead, she nodded slightly, took her stance, and raised the rifle. Her eyes locked onto the target downrange, a standard silhouette paper, but today it felt like the weight of every sneer, every whispered insult, every moment of doubt was etched into its surface. The world around her seemed to hush, the murmurs of the soldiers fading into a distant hum. All that existed was the sight in her scope, the steady beat of her heart, and the promise of the shot. The first round cracked through the air, striking dead center in the bullseye. A ripple of surprise passed through the onlookers, a flicker of disbelief in their eyes. Emma's hand remained steady as she prepared for the next shot. One by one, the bullets tore through the silence, each finding its mark with unerring precision. Headshot after headshot, the paper was riddled with perfect strikes. The soldiers' whispers faltered, replaced by an uneasy silence thick with astonishment. Corporal Mike Reynolds' jaw tightened. He shifted uncomfortably, unwilling to meet Emma's gaze. The smug confidence that had marked his earlier taunts was replaced by something closer to grudging respect, though he wouldn't admit it aloud. Colonel Harper's lips parted slightly in surprise, a rare flicker of approval crossing his normally stoic face. He stepped forward, his voice cutting through the charged air. "Impressive work, Collins." Emma lowered her weapon slowly, her eyes calmly scanning the room. The silence was heavy, the soldiers processing what they had just witnessed. Their preconceived notions, built on bias and skepticism, were crumbling before their eyes. Private Daniels, who had whispered earlier about Emma's disciplined background, let out a low whistle. "Didn't expect that. She's got talent." The shift in the atmosphere was palpable. The mocking laughter that had once filled the range was replaced by respectful nods and exchanged glances. Emma's flawless performance had shattered the barriers of doubt, forcing the unit to reassess their assumptions. Yet, beneath the surface, some resistance remained. A few soldiers exchanged quiet murmurs, unwilling to fully accept that a woman could outperform them under pressure. But the seed of change had been planted. Colonel Harper approached Emma, his gaze steady. "You've proven yourself today. Your skill, your focus, it's clear you belong here." Emma allowed herself a small, controlled smile. The journey had been arduous, marked by countless moments of doubt and challenge, but this was a milestone, a definitive turning point. As the soldiers began to regroup, preparing for the next phase of training, Emma felt a quiet surge of determination. The road ahead would still be fraught with obstacles, but she had taken a significant step toward earning the respect she deserved. Corporal Reynolds cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "All right, Collins. Guess you've earned a little credit. Don't get too comfortable, though." Emma met his gaze, unwavering. "I'm not here to compete. I'm here to contribute." The words hung in the air, a clear statement of purpose that resonated beyond the firing range. Colonel Harper nodded approvingly. "Good. Because that's exactly what we need, a team that works together, regardless of who's holding the rifle." The soldiers began to disperse, the earlier tension easing into a cautious camaraderie. Emma lingered a moment longer, her thoughts turning inward. The flawless shots had been more than just a demonstration of marksmanship, they were a declaration of her identity, a challenge to the limits imposed by others. She knew the path ahead would demand more grit, more resilience, more unyielding determination. But in this moment, standing at the center of the range, she felt the first real stirrings of acceptance. Her eyes drifted back to the target, now riddled with perfect holes, a testament to her unwavering focus. The silent message was clear, she was here to stay. The firing range had fallen into a tentative hush after Emma Collins's flawless display. The soldiers who had jeered at her before now exchanged quiet, uncertain glances, their once dismissive attitudes beginning to waver. The air was thick with unspoken questions and a grudging respect that edged its way into the group's dynamic. Emma stood apart, her posture relaxed but alert, aware that the fragile truce was just the beginning of a longer journey. Colonel James Harper approached her, his face softened by the faintest hint of approval. "Collins," he said, voice low enough that only she could hear, "you handled the pressure well. That steady aim of yours, it's not just natural talent. Tell me, where does it come from?" Emma met his gaze steadily, recognizing the genuine curiosity beneath his inquiry. She took a breath, deciding to reveal a sliver of her story. "Years of disciplined training before I enlisted, sir. I was part of a cadet program, early mornings, late nights, pushing myself beyond what was expected. It's what keeps me focused." Her voice was calm, honest, carrying the weight of her commitment. Harper nodded slowly, absorbing the truth behind her quiet confidence. "Discipline like that doesn't come easy. It's clear you've earned your place here." His words carried more weight than a simple commendation, it was an acknowledgement that transcended rank and protocol. Around them, the soldiers began to shift. Private Daniels, who had been among the first to whisper about Emma's background, stepped forward hesitantly. "Sorry for the earlier doubts, Collins. Guess I underestimated you." His voice was sincere, tinged with remorse, and a few others nodded in agreement. Emma inclined her head slightly, accepting the gesture without fanfare. She understood that respect was earned over time, not granted with the first display of skill. The group's dynamic was beginning to recalibrate, the old barriers cracking under the pressure of undeniable proof. Yet, not everyone was ready to embrace the change. Corporal Mike Reynolds lingered at the edge of the circle, his expression guarded. His earlier bravado had dimmed, replaced by a reluctant acknowledgement of her abilities, but pride held him back from full acceptance. Emma sensed the tension but chose not to confront it directly. There would be time for that later. The training session resumed, and the atmosphere, though still tentative, carried a new energy. The soldiers moved with a renewed sense of purpose, their interactions less charged with hostility and more focused on preparation. Emma's presence was no longer an anomaly but a part of the collective effort. During a break, Sergeant Major Davis approached Emma quietly. "You did good today. Not just the shooting, the way you handle yourself under fire. It's rare." His voice was gruff but carried genuine respect. "Keep it up, and you'll change more than just minds around here." Emma nodded, appreciating the encouragement. It was a small victory, but significant. The road ahead would demand resilience beyond marksmanship, endurance in the face of prejudice, and the patience to let actions speak louder than words. As the afternoon wore on, Emma found moments to reflect on the journey that had brought her here. The countless hours of solitary training, the sacrifices made to pursue a dream that many told her was impossible. Each challenge, each moment of doubt from others, had sharpened her resolve rather than diminished it. Her thoughts were interrupted by the call to assemble for the final briefing. The soldiers gathered, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and determination. Colonel Harper addressed the group, his tone firm but encouraging. "Today showed us that skill and discipline come in many forms," he said. "We expect excellence from every member of this unit. Collins has demonstrated that. Let it be a reminder that our strength lies in our ability to adapt and work together." The room echoed with nods and murmurs of agreement. The subtle shift in morale was undeniable. Emma felt a cautious optimism take root, the beginnings of a team that could transcend old biases and focus on the mission ahead. Later, as the soldiers dispersed, Emma caught sight of Corporal Reynolds once more. He approached, his demeanor less confrontational than before. "Look, Collins," he began awkwardly, "I might not have believed in you at first. But today, you earned my respect." His words were halting but sincere, a small bridge across a gulf of doubt. Emma met his gaze evenly. "Respect is earned, Reynolds. I'm glad you're willing to give me a chance." He nodded, a flicker of relief passing through his eyes. "Yeah. We're all on the same team after all." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the training grounds, Emma gathered her gear. The day had been a turning point, not just in her acceptance by the unit, but in the way she saw herself within it. The battles fought in silence, in moments of doubt and perseverance, had begun to pay off. Her steady aim had shattered preconceptions. Her discipline had earned reluctant respect. And as she prepared for the challenges yet to come, Emma knew that this was only the beginning of a larger journey, one where she would continue to break barriers, not with words, but with unwavering resolve and quiet strength. The evening settled over the base like a quiet promise, the sky painted with fading hues of amber and violet. The firing range, now empty of the day's tension and challenges, echoed faintly with the memories of shots fired and barriers broken. Private Emma Collins moved through the dimming light, her steps sure and steady as she gathered her gear. The weight of the day's transformation pressed lightly on her shoulders, no longer the outsider, but a recognized and valued member of the team. Colonel James Harper caught up with her near the barracks, his presence commanding yet unexpectedly warm. "Collins," he began, his tone carrying the gravity of the moment, "I want you to know you have my full support moving forward. What you've accomplished today is more than just skill with a rifle. It's resilience, determination, and the kind of quiet strength this unit needs." Emma met his gaze, the faintest smile touching her lips. "Thank you, sir. I'm ready for whatever comes next." Harper nodded, a flicker of approval crossing his features. "Good. Because the road ahead will demand everything you've shown, and more." As the other soldiers filtered past, some offering nods and brief greetings, Emma felt the subtle shift in their demeanor. The mocking laughter and whispered doubts had given way to cautious respect and a budding camaraderie. Corporal Mike Reynolds approached, his earlier resistance softened into tentative acceptance. "Hey, Collins," he said, voice low but sincere, "I've been thinking. You've got the skill and the guts. Maybe it's time we start seeing each other as teammates, not rivals." Emma's eyes met his steadily. "I'm here to contribute, Reynolds. Let's focus on the mission." He grinned, a spark of genuine respect shining through. Agreed. Later, in the quiet of the barracks, Emma sat alone, her thoughts turning inward. The journey had been arduous, marked by isolation, skepticism, and the constant need to prove herself. But today signified a new chapter. She was no longer just a soldier trying to fit in, she was a vital part of a team that had begun to recognize her worth. Her mind wandered to the countless hours of solitary training that had forged her steady aim and unbreakable focus. The sacrifices that had shaped her into the soldier she was today, a soldier ready to face the challenges of the battlefield with unwavering resolve. As the base settled into night, Emma prepared her gear for the days to come. The mission ahead would test more than marksmanship, it would test trust, unity, and the strength to rise above prejudice and doubt. Colonel Harper's words echoed in her mind: resilience, determination, quiet strength. These were not just qualities for survival, they were the foundation of leadership. Emma stood, her silhouette framed by the soft glow of the barracks lights. The transformation from the day's trials was clear, from a soldier doubted to a warrior respected. The path forward was uncertain, but she was ready to walk it, armed not just with skill, but with the knowledge that she had earned her place. The firing range was behind her, the battlefield ahead. And Emma Collins was prepared to face it all, steady and unyielding, a force forged in fire and determination, ready to lead and to fight alongside those who now counted her as one of their own.